It was just another day for the handyman who everyone trusted around town. He had been fixing things for years. Leaky faucets, broken fences, stubborn garage doors. You name it, he could fix it. People knew they could count on him to show up. On time, get the job done right, and never complain about the little stuff. That's why when an older woman called asking for help with her garage light, he didn't hesitate. Grabbing his toolbox, he hopped into his truck and headed over to her place. The neighborhood itself wasn't anything fancy. It was one of those quiet areas where people waved at each other as they passed by. The houses were cozy, with gardens, full of flowers and trees that shaded driveways. When he pulled up to the address, he noticed how well kept the house looked. There were flower pots lining the porch, freshly painted shutters, and even a little wind chime hanging near the door. Clearly, this homeowner took pride in her space. Before he could knock, the front door opened, and there she was, a sweet-looking older lady with silver hair tied back neatly and glasses perched on her nose. She greeted him with a warm smile and held out a steaming cup of coffee. "I figured you'd need this," she said kindly. "It's cold out here." He chuckled, taking the cup gratefully. "You're too kind, ma'am. Thanks for thinking of me." As they walked toward the garage, she explained the problem. "It keeps flickering," she said, pointing up at the light fixture dangling from the ceiling. "Sometimes it works fine, but most nights it goes dim or shuts off completely. It's driving me crazy." He nodded, already sizing up the situation. "Don't worry, we'll figure it out." Climbing up the ladder, he began inspecting the wiring while she stood below, watching closely. Every now and then she'd ask questions like, "Do you think it's the bulb, or could it be something more serious?" He answered patiently, explaining what he was doing step by step. What struck him most wasn't just how organized her garage was. Tools hung neatly on hooks, shelves lined with labeled boxes, but also how comfortable she seemed around him. Some folks got nervous having strangers in their homes, especially someone working so close to electrical wires. But not her. She chatted away casually, making small talk about the weather, local events, and even sharing stories about her grandkids. At one point she paused and tilted her head thoughtfully. "You know," she said, "you remind me of someone." "Oh yeah? Who's that?" he asked, glancing down briefly before returning to his work. "My late husband," she replied softly. "He used to tinker with things all the time, always fixing things around the house, helping neighbors. He had that same calm energy you do." For a moment, silence fell between them. He didn't know what to say. Compliments like that weren't common in his line of work, and hearing such heartfelt words caught him off guard. Instead of responding, he focused on tightening a loose screw, letting the compliment sink in quietly. After a few minutes, she changed the subject, asking if he needed another tool or if the height of the ladder was okay. Her voice stayed cheerful, but there was a hint of sadness underneath. He could tell she missed her husband deeply, yet she carried herself with grace, finding joy in everyday moments despite the loss. By the time he finished repairing the light, dusk had started to settle in. Testing the switch a few times, he smiled as the bulb lit up brightly without flickering. "There we go," he announced, climbing down the ladder. "Good as new." She clapped her hands together delightedly. "Oh, thank goodness. You have no idea how much easier this will make my evenings. Now I won't have to stumble around in the dark anymore." As he packed up his tools, she insisted on walking him to the driveway. Along the way, she pointed out different parts of her garden, telling him which plants were her favorites and which ones gave her trouble. It was clear she loved spending time outdoors, nurturing life wherever she could. Standing by his truck, she hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "You know," she said, her eyes meeting his, "people don't say thank you enough these days. So let me say it properly. You've done a wonderful job today, and I really appreciate it." Her words lingered long after he drove away. It wasn't just the gratitude that stuck with him. It was the way she made him feel valued, respected, and seen. In a world where handymen were often overlooked or taken for granted, her kindness stood out like a beacon. Little did he know, this seemingly ordinary repair job would mark the beginning of something extraordinary, a friendship that would change both their lives forever. The next time he visited her house, it wasn't because something was broken. Truthfully, he didn't know why he'd stop by. He just felt like seeing how she was doing. Maybe it was the way she'd made him feel during their last meeting. Or maybe it was curiosity about the life behind those carefully tended flower beds and neatly stacked books. Whatever the reason, he found himself pulling into her driveway one Saturday morning with a small basket of fresh fruit from the local market. When she opened the door, surprise flickered across her face before breaking into a wide smile. "Well, this is unexpected," she said, holding the door open wider. "Come on in." Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and vanilla, warm and inviting. She led him to the kitchen, where sunlight streamed through the windows, lighting up the wooden table and mismatched chairs. As they sat down together, she poured them each a cup of tea, adding sugar for him without even asking. Somehow, she already knew exactly how he liked it. They started talking, and once she got going, it was hard to stop her. She told him stories about her teaching days, how she used to teach 3rd grade and loved every minute of it. "Kids are so honest at that age," she said, laughing softly. "If they don't like you, they'll tell you straight to your face. And if they do, well, they'll follow you around like ducklings." He listened intently, nodding along as she spoke. He asked questions here and there, genuinely interested in what she had to say. In return, she asked about his life, where he grew up, how he learned his trade, and whether he enjoyed being a handyman. "It's not always easy," he admitted, stirring his tea thoughtfully. "Some days I'm running all over town, fixing things for people who barely notice the effort it takes. But then there are moments like today, when someone actually cares enough to ask how I'm doing. That makes it worth it." She smiled, warmly, leaning back in her chair. "You deserve more than just thank you, you know? People should see how much good you bring into the world." Her words caught him off guard again, just like the first time. Compliments weren't something he heard often, and hearing them from her felt different. It wasn't flattery. It was genuine appreciation, the kind that came from someone who truly saw him for who he was. As the conversation went on, she began sharing more personal things. She talked about her late husband, the man she'd spent decades loving and building a life with. Her voice softened whenever she mentioned him, filled with both sadness and fondness. "He was my rock," she said quietly. "After he passed, I didn't think I'd ever feel whole again. But life has a way of surprising you, doesn't it?" He nodded, unsure of how to respond. He hadn't lost anyone close to him. Not yet. But he could sense the weight of her grief, the quiet ache that lingered beneath her cheerful exterior. For a moment, neither of them spoke, letting the silence sit comfortably between them. Eventually, she brightened again, steering the conversation toward lighter topics. She showed him photos of her grandchildren, proudly pointing out which ones took after her and which ones were pure troublemakers. "This one," she said, tapping a picture of a little boy grinning mischievously, "he reminds me of you. Always getting into things he shouldn't." He laughed, shaking his head. "I was never that bad," he joked, though deep down he wondered if maybe he had been. By the time he left, hours had flown by without either of them noticing. Standing at the door, she handed him a jar of homemade jam. "For your trouble," she teased, winking, "and because you're too sweet to leave empty-handed." On the drive home, he couldn't stop thinking about their conversation. There was something about her kindness, her wisdom, her ability to make anyone feel welcome, that stayed with him long after he'd pulled away from her driveway. It wasn't just her words. It was the way she made him feel valued, important, and seen. Over the next few weeks, their visits became more frequent. Sometimes she'd call him for another repair job, a loose railing here, a squeaky door hinge there. Other times he'd drop by unannounced, bringing her tiny gifts like fresh vegetables from the market or a potted plant he thought she'd like. Each visit turned into an opportunity to talk, laugh, and learn more about each other. One afternoon, while helping her organize some old photo albums, she paused and looked at him thoughtfully. "You know," she said, "you remind me of him sometimes." "Who?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "My husband," she replied, her voice soft. not in looks but in spirit. He was always willing to help others no matter how busy he was, and he had this quiet strength about him, just like you. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He didn't know what to say, so instead he smiled gently and kept flipping through the pages of the album. But inside he felt a strange mix of pride and humility. Being compared to someone she clearly loved so deeply meant more to him than he could put into words. Their friendship continued to grow, becoming a steady presence in both of their lives. For her, it was a reminder that life still held surprises, even joy after loss. For him, it was a lesson in connection, in finding beauty in unexpected places. They may have come from different generations, but their bond proved that age was just a number. What mattered most was the shared humanity between them, the laughter, the stories, the quiet understanding that sometimes the simplest acts of kindness can lead to the deepest friendships. As their friendship deepened, something shifted, not dramatically but subtly, like the first signs of spring after a long winter. What started as casual visits turned into regular check-ins, and soon enough, they found themselves looking forward to these moments together. For her, it wasn't just about having someone around to fix things. It was about sharing life with someone who listened without judgment. For him, it wasn't just about earning a living. It was about feeling seen and appreciated for once. One chilly afternoon, she called him over to help hang some new curtains in the living room. The old ones had been there for years, faded and frayed at the edges. "I figured it was time for a change," she said as he arrived, holding up a set of bright floral prints. "What do you think?" He grinned, nodding approvingly. "Looks good. Fresh start, huh?" She laughed softly. "Something like that." While he worked on the curtain rods, she sat nearby, knitting something cozy-looking. Every now and then she'd glance up and offer advice or encouragement. "A little higher on the left side," she suggested, tilting her head critically. "Perfect. You've got a knack for this kind of thing." "Years of practice," he replied modestly, stepping back to admire his handiwork. "How's that look?" "Just right," she said, smiling warmly. Then, almost hesitantly, she added, "You know, I used to watch my husband do stuff like this all the time. He wasn't always great at it. Sometimes he'd end up making more mess than progress, but I loved watching him try." Her voice trailed off, and for a moment, the room felt heavy with memories. She didn't cry. She rarely did. But there was a wistfulness in her eyes that made him pause. "I bet he was proud of what he accomplished," he said gently, trying to lighten the mood. "Even if it wasn't perfect." She nodded, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "He was proud of everything he did. For me, for our family. And even though he's gone, I still feel him everywhere. In the garden, in the kitchen, in little things like this." She gestured toward the newly hung curtains. "It's funny how life works, isn't it? You think you'll never move on, and then one day, you realize you're carrying them with you wherever you go." He didn't say anything right away. Instead, he focused on packing up his tools, giving her space to process her thoughts. But later, as they sat down with cups of tea, he opened up a bit too. "You ever feel like, I don't know, like people expect you to be okay because you're strong?" he asked, stirring sugar into his drink. "Like they forget that being strong doesn't mean you don't hurt sometimes?" She looked at him thoughtfully, nodding slowly. "All the time. People see me as the cheerful widow, or the retired teacher who's always busy. They don't realize how lonely it can get, especially at night when the house is quiet. Sometimes I talk to the cat just to hear another voice." Her honesty surprised him, not because it was shocking, but because it was so raw. He realized then that she wasn't just opening up to him. She was trusting him with pieces of herself that she didn't share with everyone. That trust meant something, and he wanted to honor it. "Well," he said finally, "you've got me now. If you ever need someone to listen, or even just sit quietly, I'm here." Her smile was small, but genuine. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more than you know." From that day on, their bond grew stronger. They weren't just handyman and homeowner anymore. They were friends, confidants, two people navigating life's ups and downs together. She introduced him to neighbors, insisting they hire him for odd jobs around their homes. Word spread quickly about his skill and reliability, and before long his schedule filled up with new clients. But no matter how busy he got, he always made time for her. Whether it was stopping by to change a light bulb or simply sitting on the porch chatting about nothing in particular, she remained a constant presence in his life, and in return she gave him something he hadn't realized he needed, a sense of belonging. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, she turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "You know, I've been thinking." "About what?" he asked, raising an eyebrow playfully. "About your future," she said seriously. "You're talented, hard-working, and trustworthy. Have you ever thought about starting your own business? Something bigger than just fixing things for folks around town?" He blinked, caught off guard. I guess I haven't really thought about it much." "Why?" "Because you deserve it," she replied firmly. "You've got the skills and people trust you. Imagine what you could do if you put your mind to it. A proper company, maybe even hiring others to work with you. You could make a real difference." The idea lingered in his mind long after their conversation ended. At first it seemed overwhelming, even impossible. Starting a business required money, resources, and courage, none of which he felt entirely sure he had. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized she might be onto something. Maybe it was time for a change, for both of them. Over the next few weeks, they brainstormed ideas together. She helped him draft a simple business plan, encouraged him to reach out to former clients for feedback, and even offered to lend him some savings to get started. "Consider it an investment," she said with a wink. "And don't argue. I won't take no for an answer." Grateful beyond words, he accepted her offer, promising to pay her back as soon as he could. Together, they began building something neither of them had expected, a partnership rooted in mutual respect and shared dreams. For her, it was a chance to give back, to pass on the lessons she'd learned over a lifetime. For him, it was a chance to prove, to himself and to the world, that he was capable of more than he'd ever imagined. Their friendship had become a bridge between generations, a testament to the power of connection and belief in one another. And through it all, they continued to laugh, to share stories, and to remind each other that life, no matter how unpredictable, was worth living fully. Little did they know, their journey was only beginning, and the best was yet to come. Life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds, and their friendship was no exception. One cold winter evening, everything changed in an instant. He was at home, relaxing after a long day of work, when his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. Answering it, he heard a shaky voice on the other end. "It's me," she said, her tone strained. I fell outside. My wrist hurts so much and I can't get up." His heart sank. Without wasting a second, he grabbed his coat and rushed to her house. When he arrived, he found her sitting on the icy porch steps, clutching her arm tightly. Her face was pale and tears glistened in her eyes, though she tried hard not to let them fall. "Don't move," he instructed gently, crouching beside her. "Let me see." Carefully, he examined her wrist, which was already starting to swell. "We need to get you to the hospital," he said firmly. "Can you stand?" She nodded weakly, and with his help she managed to get to her feet. Wrapping her in a blanket from inside the house, he drove her straight to the emergency room. The doctors confirmed what they both feared. It was fractured. She'd need a cast and plenty of rest over the next few weeks. On the drive back home, she leaned her head against the car window, looking exhausted but grateful. "Thank you," she murmured softly. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come." "You don't have to thank me," he replied, glancing at her, briefly before focusing on the road. "That's what friends are for." Over the next several days, he became her unofficial caregiver. With her dominant hand out of commission, everyday tasks suddenly felt monumental. Cooking meals, carrying groceries, even opening jars, all of it required assistance. But he didn't mind. Every morning he stopped by her house to check on her, bringing coffee and breakfast along with updates about his growing business plans. At first, she resisted relying on him too much. "You're busy enough as it is," she protested one afternoon as he chopped vegetables for soup in her kitchen. "I hate feeling like a burden." "You're not a burden," he insisted, slicing carrots with practiced ease. "Besides, who else is going to make sure you eat properly? You can't live off toast and tea forever." Her laugh was soft but genuine, and it eased some of the tension in the air. Slowly but surely she began to accept his help, not because she had no choice, but because she trusted him completely. That trust meant the world to him, knowing that someone valued him enough to lean on him during tough times. Their conversations, during those weeks, grew deeper than ever before. Late nights spent watching old movies together turned into heartfelt talks about life, loss, and hope. She shared stories about her late husband, their happiest memories, the challenges they faced, and how she coped after his passing. In return, he opened up about his own struggles, growing up without much guidance, working odd jobs to make ends meet, and dreaming of something bigger while doubting whether he could actually achieve it. "I used to think I wasn't good enough," he admitted one evening as they sat by the fireplace wrapped in blankets. "Like no matter how hard I worked, people would always see me as just the handyman, not someone with dreams or goals." She reached out with her uninjured hand, patting his arm reassuringly. "Anyone who sees you that way doesn't truly know you. You're smart, capable, and kind-hearted. Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise." Her words stayed with him long after the conversation ended. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was capable of achieving the things he dreamed of, and having her support made all the difference. As her wrist healed, their partnership blossomed into something even stronger. Neighbors noticed how often he visited her house and started whispering behind closed doors. Some assumed ulterior motives, questioning why a younger man would spend so much time with an older woman. Others accused him of taking advantage of her generosity. When rumors reached her ears, she didn't hesitate to shut them down. At the next community meeting, she stood up and addressed the gossip head-on. "Let me make one thing clear," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the murmurs around her. "This young man is family to me now. Anyone who has a problem with our friendship can take it up with me directly. Until then, I suggest you focus on your own lives instead of spreading nonsense about ours." Her defense silenced the critics, and from that point forward, their bond only grew stronger. People began to see what she already knew, that their relationship was built on mutual respect, kindness, and unwavering support. By the time spring rolled around, her wrist had healed, and his business plans were well underway. Together, they finalized the details of what would become his new venture, a small company dedicated to helping others improve their homes while mentoring young tradespeople from underserved communities. She helped him design the logo, write promotional materials, and spread the word among neighbors and friends. On the day he officially launched the business, she stood proudly beside him, beaming with pride. "Look at you," she said, her eyes shining with emotion. "All this hard work, all these dreams, you've made them real. I'm so proud of you." He hugged her tightly, overwhelmed with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," he whispered. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. That's something I'll never forget." Their friendship had transformed both of their lives in ways neither of them could have predicted. For her, it was a reminder that love and connection could endure even after loss. For him, it was proof that kindness and encouragement could unlock potential he never knew he had. Together, they proved that true friendships weren't bound by age, circumstance, or societal expectations. They were rooted in understanding, trust, and shared humanity. And though challenges still lay ahead, they faced them side by side, confident in the knowledge that they had each other's backs no matter what. Time has a way of slipping by unnoticed when you're busy living life to its fullest. For them, the months following the launch of his business were filled with milestones, some big, some small, but all meaningful. Their friendship had become the foundation for something greater, not just for him personally, but for their entire community. His new company quickly gained traction, thanks in no small part to her relentless support. She introduced him to everyone she knew, from longtime neighbors to friends at her monthly book club. "He's the best handyman you'll ever meet," she'd say with a proud smile. "And trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I've seen him fix things most people wouldn't even attempt." Word spread fast, and soon his schedule was packed with projects. But no matter how busy he got, he always made time for her. Whether it was stopping by after work to check on her garden or sitting down for dinner together on weekends, she remained a constant presence in his life. And in return, she gave him something money couldn't buy: a sense of purpose, belonging, and unconditional encouragement. One sunny afternoon, as they sat together on her porch sipping lemonade, she looked at him thoughtfully. "You've come so far," she said, her voice tinged with pride. "Do you remember when we first met? You were just here to fix my garage light." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Yeah, I remember. Never thought that one little job would lead to all this." "Life works in mysterious ways," she replied softly. "Sometimes the smallest moments turn into the biggest blessings." Her words lingered in the air, resonating deeply. He realized then how much their journey had transformed both of them. For her, it wasn't just about having someone to rely on, it was about rediscovering joy after years of quiet loneliness. For him, it wasn't just about building a successful business, it was about finding confidence, purpose, and a family he never expected to have. But life isn't without its challenges, and theirs wasn't immune to them either. As her health began to decline slightly with age, she started needing more help around the house. Simple tasks like climbing stairs or carrying groceries became harder for her to manage on her own. Yet she refused to let it slow her down entirely. Instead, she leaned on him, not out of necessity, but because she trusted him completely. "Hate feeling useless," she admitted one evening as they sat together in her cozy living room. Outside, rain pattered gently against the windows, creating a soothing rhythm. "I used to do everything myself, but now, well, it's frustrating." "You're not useless," he said firmly, setting aside the book he'd been reading aloud. To her, "You're amazing. Look at everything you've done, raising kids, teaching generations of students, keeping this beautiful home alive. Just because you need a hand sometimes doesn't mean you're any less incredible." She smiled faintly, though her eyes still held a hint of sadness. "It's hard letting go of independence, but I suppose it helps having someone like you around." "You'll always have me," he promised, reaching over to squeeze her hand gently. "No matter what happens, I'm not going anywhere." Her gratitude was evident in the way her eyes softened, tears threatening to spill over. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." As the seasons changed, so did their roles in each other's lives. While he continued to grow his business, taking on bigger projects and mentoring young apprentices, she found new ways to contribute too. Even with limited mobility, she poured her energy into supporting his dreams. She designed flyers for upcoming events, wrote heartfelt testimonials for clients, and offered advice whenever he felt overwhelmed. "You're doing great," she told him during one particularly stressful week when deadlines loomed and supplies ran short. "Just take a deep breath and tackle one thing at a time. You've got this." Her calm reassurance steadied him, reminding him why he started in the first place. With her guidance, he learned to navigate challenges with patience and perseverance, qualities she embodied effortlessly. Their bond also inspired others in unexpected ways. Young apprentices working under him noticed how he prioritized kindness alongside craftsmanship. Clients appreciated not just the quality of his work, but the genuine care he showed toward every project. Neighbors who once doubted their friendship now saw it as a model of mutual respect and compassion. One day, while attending a local charity event where his business donated services to renovate a community center, she pulled him aside. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she handed him an envelope. "Open it later," she instructed, smiling mischievously, "but promise me you'll read it tonight." Curious, he tucked the envelope into his pocket and forgot about it until he got home late that evening. Sitting alone in his kitchen, he finally opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, filled with her characteristic warmth and wisdom. "Dear friend," it began, "I wanted to write this because words are powerful, and yours deserve to be remembered. From the moment I met you, I saw something special, a quiet strength, a generous heart, and a determination to make the world better. You've accomplished so much already, but I know this is only the beginning. Keep dreaming, keep believing in yourself, and never forget how many lives you touch along the way. Thank you for being exactly who you are." The letter went on, recounting specific moments they'd shared, their laughter, their struggles, their triumphs, and ended with a simple yet profound message: "You are loved." Tears blurred his vision as he folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. He didn't need to respond right away. The weight of her words settled into his heart, filling him with a renewed sense of purpose. Years passed, and their friendship only grew stronger. Though her health continued to decline, she faced each challenge with grace and courage, leaning on him as much as he leaned on her. Together, they proved that love and connection could transcend age, circumstance, and even mortality. And through it all, they reminded everyone around them, including themselves, that true friendships aren't defined by how long they last, but by the depth of understanding, trust, and love they create along the way. Life has a way of reminding us that nothing lasts forever, but it also teaches us that love and memories can endure long after someone is gone. For them, the years they shared became a treasure chest of moments. Laughter-filled afternoons on the porch, quiet evenings by the fire, and countless conversations about life, dreams, and everything in between. But as time marched on, her health began to fade more noticeably. The vibrant woman who once greeted him with warm smiles and endless stories now moved slower, her energy waning with each passing season. He noticed the changes, of course. How could he not? Yet he refused to let sadness overshadow their bond. Instead, he doubled down on his efforts to make her days brighter. On weekends, he brought over puzzles she loved solving or books he thought she'd enjoy. Sometimes they'd sit outside under the shade of her favorite tree, watching birds flit from branch to branch while reminiscing about old times. "You know," she said one crisp autumn afternoon, "I've lived a good life, a really good life. And I owe so much of that to you." He shook his head, smiling softly. "You don't owe me anything. You've given me so much more than I could ever repay." She reached out, patting his hand gently. "Don't sell yourself short. You've been my friend, my helper, my cheerleader. Without you, these last few years wouldn't have been nearly as beautiful." Her words stayed with him long after their conversation ended. Though she spoke lightly, he knew what she was saying, that she was preparing him for what lay ahead. It wasn't easy to hear, but he understood. After all, she had always been honest with him, never shying away from difficult truths. When the inevitable finally came, it felt like the world paused for a moment. She passed peacefully in her sleep, leaving behind a legacy of kindness, resilience, and love. Her family called him immediately, knowing how close they were. They thanked him for being there for her when they couldn't be, for filling her final years with joy and companionship. At her funeral, the church was packed with people whose lives she had touched, students she'd taught decades ago, neighbors she'd befriended, and even strangers who admired her spirit from afar. As eulogies were shared, one common theme emerged. She had an uncanny ability to see the best in people and bring it out into the light. When it was his turn to speak, he stood nervously at the podium, gripping the edges tightly. He hadn't planned a speech, he didn't think he needed to, but as he looked out at the sea of faces, he realized how important it was to honor her memory properly. "I first met her because of a flickering garage light," he began, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "But our friendship grew far beyond that. She taught me things I didn't even know I needed to learn, about patience, courage, and believing in myself. She saw potential in me when I couldn't see it myself, and she pushed me to chase dreams I thought were impossible." Pausing to collect himself, he glanced down at the notes he'd scribbled earlier. "Most importantly, she showed me what true friendship looks like. It's not about age or circumstance, it's about showing up, listening, and caring deeply. She did all of those things not just for me but for everyone lucky enough to know her. The room fell silent except for the occasional sniffle. When he finished speaking, the applause was heartfelt and prolonged, a testament to the impact she'd had on so many lives. After the service, her family handed him a sealed envelope. "She left this for you," they explained, their eyes red from crying. "She wanted you to have it." Later that night, sitting alone in his living room, he opened the envelope carefully. Inside was another handwritten letter, just like the one she'd given him years ago. This time, however, it carried a different weight, a bittersweet mix of gratitude and farewell. "Dear friend," it read, "if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here to share coffee and stories with you. But please don't grieve too much. I've lived a full life thanks in large part to you. You gave me laughter when I needed it most, strength when I felt weak, and hope when I thought I had none left. Because of you, my final years were filled with light and love." The letter went on to thank him for specific moments they'd shared. Their first conversation under the garage light, the day she encouraged him to start his business, the quiet night spent talking about life's big questions. Then came the part that made his chest tighten with emotion. "To honor me. Keep doing what you're doing, helping others, chasing your dreams, and spreading kindness wherever you go. That's how you'll keep me alive, in your heart, and in the world. Oh, and one last thing, I've left you something special in my will. Use it wisely, and remember, you are capable of amazing things." Tears streamed down his face as he folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. He didn't need to wait long to discover what she meant by something special. A week later, her lawyer contacted him with news. She'd left him a modest inheritance. Not an extravagant amount, but enough to take his business to the next level. With her blessing and financial support, he expanded his company, hiring more apprentices and taking on larger projects. He renamed it Harper & Johnson Handiworks, combining her surname with his own as a tribute to the woman who believed in him when no one else did. The business thrived, becoming known not just for its quality craftsmanship, but also for its mission, to mentor young tradespeople from underserved communities. Every year on her birthday, he visited her grave with fresh flowers and updates on his life. Sitting quietly by her headstone, he told her about new clients, successful projects, and the apprentices who were learning the trade under his guidance. Sometimes, he'd simply sit in silence, letting the memories wash over him. "You were right," he whispered during one visit. "About everything. I wouldn't be here without you." Though she was gone, her presence remained, a guiding light that continued to inspire him and everyone whose lives he touched. Their friendship proved that connections forged through kindness and trust could transcend even death, leaving behind a legacy of love and hope. And every time he fixed a broken light or hung new curtains, he remembered the woman who changed his life with a simple compliment. "You're handsome, you know that."